Today we've got a story about stolen genius, a history that was literally written in stone and then deliberately erased. This is the story of the engineer in the shadows.
So picture this. For over 170 years, there's been a bridge in Texas that has stood against everything thrown at it. Floods, wars, you name it. It's so well built that it baffles modern engineers. But here's the thing, the builder wasn't anonymous at all. His story and the incredible genius behind it were deliberately buried. So let's go uncover the truth.
We're talking about the Brazos River Bridge, which opened way back in 1849. And when engineers look at it today, they're just puzzled. They see this mathematical perfection, this ingenious design that was decades ahead of its time. And the whole thing was publicly credited to a man who, well, he couldn't have possibly come up with it.
And here are the two men at the heart of this whole story. On one side, you have Colonel Edmund Pierce. He was a wealthy plantation owner, a public figure who took all the credit. And on the other side, Isaac Brown, a man listed in Pierce's own ledgers simply as property, who was the true, brilliant mind behind the entire project.
So the big question is, right? How on earth does an enslaved man in the 1840s become one of the most innovative engineers of his generation? It all comes down to a forbidden education and an unstoppable mind.
Isaac's journey really began with his mother, Ruth. She gave him the gift of literacy, which was, of course, illegal. And that just sparked this deep hunger in him to understand how things worked. So when he was sold to a railroad company, he seized the opportunity. He watched surveyors, he studied plans, he basically soaked up every ounce of knowledge he could find. And on that railroad, a German engineer named Heinrich Weber actually noticed Isaac's talent. He took him under his wing and taught him a core principle that would define Isaac's entire life. You don't just build for today, you build for a century from now. You build something that is gonna stand no matter what.
$800. That's what Colonel Pierce paid for Isaac in 1832. In his ledger, he simply wrote down that this human being had some mechanical aptitude. I mean, that might just be the greatest understatement in the history of engineering. It's chilling how a genius could be reduced to just a line item in an accounting book.
So once Isaac is on Pierce's plantation, this really twisted arrangement starts to take shape. See, Pierce was great at using his connections to win big state contracts, but he had absolutely zero engineering skill. And he quickly realized he now owned the solution to that problem.
Pierce basically created a formula. It was a perfect system for fraud. Step 1, use his social standing to get the job. Step 2, secretly pass all the hard engineering work over to Isaac. Step 3, Isaac solves these impossible problems in his cabin by candlelight. And Step 4, Pierce takes Isaac's brilliant plans, claims them as his own, and builds this celebrated career on a foundation of pure theft. And then came the ultimate test. The state offered a massive contract, $15,000, which was an absolute fortune in 1843, to bridge the wild and unpredictable Brazos River. Every previous attempt had been destroyed, but Pierce, with his usual bravado, won the contract, and then he handed the impossible problem right over to Isaac.
And Isaac's solution? Well, it was just pure genius. He didn't just design a bridge, he designed a system that worked with the river's power. His arch supports, the angled foundations, these things were revolutionary. This was a design decades ahead of its time, built specifically to handle the river's most violent moods.
So for 6 long years, the bridge slowly rose from the riverbed. It was so well designed that it actually proved its strength before it was even finished, surviving 2 massive floods that washed away everything else around it. But as the bridge got more famous, so did the questions about Colonel Pierce's supposed genius.
The problem was, the bridge was just too good. It was so innovative that it started attracting attention from formally trained engineers, and pretty soon, the lie that held Pierce's entire world together began to crack, putting Isaac's life in terrible danger. So you have these visiting engineers showing up, and they start asking, technical questions. They're looking at a design that's so sophisticated it just doesn't line up with what was known in American engineering at the time. And it definitely didn't line up with a plantation owner who had no training.
Pierce tried to bluff. He used notes that Isaac had prepped for him, but his understanding was paper thin. When they started asking to see his design process, his actual calculations, he was cornered. He couldn't explain the work because, well, he hadn't done it.
As that pressure just kept mounting, Pierce's fear turned directly toward Isaac.
He finally realized that it didn't matter how many documents he forged. The living, breathing proof of his fraud was Isaac himself.
Isaac actually overheard Pierce arranging to have him killed right before a final, crucial inspection. He had to run, and in this incredibly tragic, ironic twist, the only safe place he could think to hide was inside the dark, hollow spaces of the very bridge he had designed.
After 3 days, hiding in the dark, listening to his life's work being praised as the work of his oppressor, Isaac emerged. He took a piece of stone and he carved a message deep inside the bridge's structure. A hidden confession. A truth in stone waiting for a future generation to find it.
But, Isaac couldn't hide forever. His defiant act was a message for the future, but his own future was quickly running out. Let's see how this story ends, and how a truth that was buried for nearly a century was finally brought into the light.
Isaac was captured. He was handed back to Colonel Pierce. And then, he just disappeared. The official record claims he died of a fever. A very convenient, unquestioned end that permanently silenced the one person who could expose the entire lie.
But Isaac's message worked. It survived. In 1923, engineers doing renovations found that hidden inscription, and that led them to find a buried packet of Isaac's original, detailed plans. The evidence was just undeniable. You had the handwriting, the sheer quality of the work compared to Pierce's other mediocre projects. It all pointed to one man, Isaac Brown.
74 years. Just let that sink in. For almost 3/4 of a century, the world believed a complete lie. Isaac Brown's name, his mind, his incredible contribution, all of it was just erased from history.
Today, the bridge is finally, rightfully known as the Brown-Pierce Bridge. It doesn't carry traffic anymore, but it stands as a historical monument, a silent testament to the man who built it to last, making sure that his story and his name would last too.
In the end, Isaac's Bridge is both a monument and a gravestone, a powerful symbol of stolen genius. And it leaves us with this really haunting question. How many other stories, how many other brilliant minds are still buried in the foundations of the world we see every single day?